Yes, we are live. All right. Cheers. Huzzah. To raise my glass to you. Cheers. And welcome to season 2. I guess we can call it season 2 of the Tavern because we did take a little hiatus, summer hiatus. And now we're back. We're back in October, and I thought October 1st would be a good time to come back. I originally did want to come back in August, but that, I don't know, things just got really busy, and I did do, I think, a very, very brief one here in, I think it was back in July. I did a very, very brief one. But yes, April has joined us. So I'm kicking off this season with one of my favorite people in the living history world, April Thomas. So yeah, she's in the house. Yes, so if you could just send a request to join, and I will, and I will approve of you. Okay, there you go. There's always that little moment of panic there. Hey!
Hi!
How are you?
I'm good,
God,
Tiffany.
it's great to see you.
It's great to see you too. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. How have you been?
I'm hanging on. I have lots of support. Yeah, I've got lots of support, so I'm doing okay. I'm hanging on.
Yeah. Aw. Yeah, but it's really, really great to see you. And it's like I'm really happy to have you on, George.
Thank
and so,
you.
Hey,
Yeah.
thanks for joining us. I'm just really, really excited to be doing this new season. I kind of wanted to. I'm attempting to make things look a little bit more tavern-y, just to kind of give it a different vibe, as opposed to me sitting on my couch. But, that was a good place to start,
Of course.
I kind of started doing these live streams in quarantine because I wanted to do more lives. I started doing them on Facebook. And hey, Michael, how are you? I started doing them on Facebook, and then they slowly just evolved into me, the Tavern Livestream, and me having people on. And so.
That's awesome, and I love your outfit. It's gorgeous. I went a little retro Halloween, but I love the gothic because, I was either gonna super gothic or Halloween retro, and I got this dress last year and couldn't go out and wear it anywhere. So I was like, I'm getting it out. I'm wearing this.
Hey, why not? So I do have to. I'm gonna move my phone up just a tad. Sure. I have to mind the candles, though.
Yeah, me too. Although mine are fake. Don't tell anyone. They're fake. They're great.
Yes. Hey, John, thanks for joining us. All right, so now this isn't done, okay? Because I'm going to be, I love it. I love it. I love it, yes.
Homegrown pumpkin all. I'm so proud. It's the only pumpkin this year. It is the only pumpkin, and it's perfect, but it's perfect.
Yeah. It is. I love it. It's such a perfect pumpkin. Yes. So, but I'm going to give a couple of shout outs here before we begin.
Go for it.
You remember me talking about Fanny's Boozy Jams and Jelly. Hey, Inspector Greg. Hi, John. Again, good evening. I think they're referring to themselves as now, because they've expanded their merch, Fanny's Battlefields Jams and Teacup Delights. And look, they're making candles now. This is called a Witch's Collection.
Oh my gosh.
And it smells absolutely heavenly. They sent me this lovely care package of all this stuff. I did an unboxing of it because they're that awesome.
Oh my gosh.
And of course, one of my favorite candle companies, Mythology Candles, their Alchemist candle. It's absolutely lovely. And what I'm drinking in here is Fanny's pumpkin pie tea. It's from their the Battlefield Jams and Jellies and their Teacup Delights. They have a pumpkin pie tea out right now. I don't know how well you can see that between the candles in here. I don't know. I'll figure this out.
So it's good. Yeah. Looks good. I can see everything.
Drinking the pumpkin pie and Witch's Brew tonight. Their Witch's Brew is really good.
You know what? Witch's Brew, anything I've ever had. I've had coffee from at least 3 or 4 companies that they call Witch's Brew, and it's always amazing. So I'm sure it's good. I'm sure it's good.
Yeah. anything called Witch's Brew ends up being really, really amazing. So
Yeah.
Even though I'm not drinking it right now, I'll probably drink it later on in the month for another live stream. But this is delicious. It has like peppermint, spearmint, honeybush, chamomile, calendula, and rose.
Oh.
So it's delicious. And of course, this is like pumpkin, cinnamon, very, very delicious. And also, I don't know if you've ever met Tin Man Roy. He goes to living history and reenactment events. He's a tinsmith.
I probably have. That's gorgeous.
To my setup.
Oh my gosh.
It's a lantern.
Oh my gosh.
Isn't it lovely?
It's beautiful.
There's an actual candle in there.
It's beautiful.
Yeah. I bought it at Fort Henry Days back in September. So when I performed with Wayward Companions there. And and then last but not least, because people ask me like last time I wore this lipstick in a live stream what color it was, and it's Besame Noir Red. They're 1930. It's like basically based on a color worn in 1930. So
I love Besame. I think we're all into Besame now because I got
all of us into like the historical realm are into Besame.
Oh, absolutely. You have to be, because when you realize that she plug for her. She's an amazing person. Like they hand make the lipsticks just like they hand mold them like they used to, and when you look at how well they turn out, you're like, oh my gosh, you never want to go back to normal, grocery store lipstick ever again. I know, right? Yeah. You're like, that stuff's garbage. I'm gonna use these. So yeah, it's Besame.com, right? But they have like every 30s and 40s lipstick you can think of, and they're gorgeous. I think it's beautiful. It's very, you've got like the whole Snow White like thing. You're rocking the whole Snow White. I love it. It's great.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Yes, and these earrings I actually got at Penn's Colony. I thought they were very Celtic looking. Beth Moore, she's Sunburst. I think it's called Sunburst Designs. Makes beautiful, beautiful earrings. I thought, like I said, they had a very Celtic look to them, so I was just like, I'm there. So I don't know if you're drinking anything, but
I am. I figured, wine. I haven't had red wine. I'm really not supposed to drink anything, but a little red wine is going to be really good for. I hear it's good for your liver, and
there you go.
So huzzah, dears! Cheers, everyone. Cheers. And thank you all for joining. It's so nice to see.
Thanks for joining.
Dries is my bud. I see Paul's in there too. You all, it's so nice to see you guys. Thanks for coming. And we'll try to tell you some fun, spooky stories. So
I know, right? And hey, for those of you watching, if you have any experiences of your own, drop them in the comments. I'd love to hear them. Oh, cheers, Teresa. Thank you. Yay. Yeah, I'd love to hear. I'd love to hear them. I'm sure April. I don't want to speak for April, but I'm sure she'd love to hear them too.
So. Oh my gosh. Yes, because that's the sort of thing I feel like it's one of those things in life, and you don't often like blurt out something that's happened to you that's been paranormal or unusual or weird, but usually when you do, someone around you will go, well, actually there was this time when I had this thing happen. And that's usually how these things happen. So even if it wasn't something, there's always good stories. So throw comments in there, let us know, because it's funny.
Us know, like what you might have experienced too. So absolutely. So I know you have worked at your share of living history events and sites and everything. What have you experienced?
So I thought about this yesterday, and a few really good ones came to mind and some silly ones. So I'll start with the silly ones because they're hilarious. So when people say, well, there's no such thing as the paranormal, or you're just whatever. I always go to this one where I'm like, well, there's, you should just never be too quick to judge. But the first site that I grew up at, which was the Colonial Pennsylvania Plantation, was a beautiful site, and it was a huge living history working farm, right? And there was a full-time farmer always living there. And down the years, there'd been several, they would work for several years and then sort of give up, they'd be for 6 or 7 years and then they move on. Yeah. And so the two previous to me working there had some good stories that kind of got passed down from farmer to farmer. Well, when I was there was a farmer there named Lloyd, and he was a lovely man. And he used to say to me, because I grew up on this site, so he was always careful not to, influence the kids and say anything too scary. But at one point he would sort of say, the things that would happen to him when he would lock the house up and how things would get moved. And the family that lived in that house were their name was Pratt. And so we used to joke that when something got moved around, it would be Mrs. Pratt because she didn't like where we left things, right? Yeah, Mrs. Pratt would move this, Mrs. Pratt would move that. Well, around the year, I think it was like 1998, 99, when Swiffer claws, the Swiffer cleaners were like new.
Yeah. Okay.
The Swiffers would end up, like the box of Swiffers, would get moved from like one part of the building into like the freezer. She didn't know what they were. She would move them into the freezer. The ghost would literally, I'm telling you, it would happen like so many times. People thought somebody was
into the freezer.
Yeah, because our joke was we thought it had to be the ghost because she didn't know what they were. She just like was trying to get our attention. But for a while there, all the interpreters thought it was a joke. We thought someone was like spoofing us or playing a joke on each other. And maybe in the end they were, but it was the most hilarious thing where these like random things would end up in the freezer. But for this period of time, it was just like the Swiffer box, the Swiffers.
Yeah.
So it was so crazy, right? It's like, where are the Swiffers? And go check the freezer. So things like that were always just so sort of funny. But the most eerie experience I ever had was in the Powell house in Philadelphia.
Oh, okay.
And this was like a mega like in the middle of the night, you stood up and got up and just sat there and tried to figure out what was going on. Years ago, I was a volunteer and a docent for them, along with some other friends. And our friend's mother she was in the National Park Service. So we were always volunteering and worked at the Liberty Bell for a while, different things like that. Yeah. So there was a period where we were working an event at the Powell House, and the Powells were a real famous family involved in the Revolution and the beginnings of Philadelphia. So they were a really wealthy family. We were staying overnight in the modern wing, the period wing of the house because there was like a huge special event, and 3 or 4 of us gals had bunked out up in the ballroom with permission from the caretaker at the time, who we knew really well. And basically we were sleeping. It was the middle of the night, and we had like a radio in the room with us, and we were like in sleeping bag stuff because basically the event was so late we just stayed over rather than drive out of the city.
Right.
So to make a long story short, there was this hilarious thing that the caretaker had on the hallway. It was like a motion sensor little frog thing. So like you could tell when someone was coming up to the 3rd floor, it was like one of those early sensors that would go ribbit, ribbit when someone would walk by it, right?
Oh, wow.
So in the middle, and it's one of those old-fashioned staircases with like the platform, and then another set of stairs, and then a platform, and then another set up to the 3rd floor. So here we are in the ballroom, right? And it's like 2 or 3, it's like witching hour. It's 3 a.m. And all of a sudden, ribbit,
totally.
Ribbit, ribbit. We're just like 3 a.m, ribbit, ribbit, ribbit. We're like,
oh goodness.
And you're like, what's going on? Like, what is that? And we went ribbit, 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 and we're like, is that that thing? And so one of us got up and walked down the stairs and like turned him around, and if you turned him towards the wall, he would alarm for a second because the wall was there, but then would stop, right?
Yeah.
So the little thing was turned around, aimed at the wall, and then literally went back up, and we're all sort of laying back down, and at the time I'm like 16, 17 years old.
Yeah.
Ribbit, 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 and we're just like, oh my God! So basically something was on the stairs. It was either moving the stairs and activating the little alarm, or it was something was in front of it, but it happened for several minutes. So there's like 3 or 4 like teenage docents who just helped at this major event, and we've been like serving canapes to like next door neighbor was like the ambassador to like Greece, and this one over here was the ambassador, whatever, and we're like exhausted, and we're like waking up in the middle of the night going, oh my God, the house is haunted. This is haunted. It was really truly haunted. Yeah, it was creepy. It was really creepy. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that would definitely creep me, especially at 3 a.m.
Yeah, because it's always some time like that. Like, whenever you hear these stories, it's always, that's what makes it so, I think at the time it's happening, you're thinking, no, this can't be happening. But there's something about that hour. There's something very...
Yeah.
I don't know, but...
Definitely something about 3 a.m. that makes,
makes things happen.
Makes, like, just all of that come out,
Yeah, exactly. So that was kind of like the weirdest, craziest thing that ever happened. And I had some other experiences in that same house, but they were little things. It was just sort of like doors slamming or things. You've probably experienced this too, where things in historic sites move all the time. Like stuff just gets moved. Yeah,
absolutely.
They want you to know they're there. So yeah.
Hey, a couple people just joined us again. So hey, Chris and Dr. Chopa. Sorry if I totally butchered that, but
That's what my friend Sarah. Hey, Sarah.
hey guys. So, yes. So, and Anthony just joined us too. Awesome. Yay. So at the John Neville house, and this was actually just this past Christmas. Okay.
Ooh, okay.
Now, yeah. So now I am, I'm getting everything ready for the Christmas presentation. Now, just due to everything going on, we did not do like an in-person Christmas tour like there normally would have been. Instead, what we did was we did a virtual, like a virtual video tour. Mm-hmm. And so I'm getting everything set up for that. And I was there with one of the other board members, but then she left. And so I'm just there by myself, which, I'm okay with. That's fine. It was still early enough in the, afternoon, or in the, closer to evening, but it was getting pretty close. But it was still early enough to where it's like, okay, I'm not here in the dark all by myself.
Right.
So...
Which happens a lot in those places, and you're like, oh, I'm by myself in the dark in a spooky house. Okay. Freak out.
I know, right? Yeah. So I'm just kind of just getting everything ready and all of that fun stuff. And I hear this woman's voice talking, just clear as day, talking, there was no question. It was definitely a woman's voice. And I thought because it had been a female board member that I had, that I was with there, just kind of getting preparations. And she, like I said, she left. I was kind of just there putting on some finishing touches. And, and I heard a woman's voice. I thought maybe she had come back, so I'm just like, wait, what? And I go to the entrance, because I wasn't far from the entrance. I go to the entrance and there was nobody there. I checked outside around the grounds, there was nobody there. I was the only one there, And I was just like, all right. And then there were other times when I was there working on a few things, and and other people have heard this too. You'll hear somebody sneeze.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or
you'll
cough.
hear somebody
coughing a lot. You often hear
cough,
a yeah.
I've heard somebody cough before. Yeah, one of the other board members said that he felt a hand on his shoulder and there was nobody else there. And there was one of the other board members, he was actually there at night, and just for fun, he snapped some photos, and he saw, of course, orbs in the photos.
Oh,
and,
wow.
Yeah, he was there, because he had to stop for something there late at night, so he snapped some photos. And then there's a couple people that said that they thought they actually saw John Neville walking across the grounds. And there were a couple of times when I was there, I thought I could see there was somebody walking across the grounds, and I would turn and there would be nobody there.
It's really interesting how many stories and tales you hear of people at a site that even places Disney World, people catch Walt, what looks like Walt Disney walking all the time. And I think about it, well, if someone left such a legacy or their home is still here, it does really, blow your mind to think they could still be walking around. They could be happily haunting it. It's very interesting to think about. But there's so many times people see something that just so unmistakable. It does make you really wonder, what's going on? Yeah, but if someone loves something so much or spent so much time there, their energy just maybe never leaves. I mean, I have 100 theories on it, but I definitely, and I mean, I'm a firm believer in our Heavenly Father, but I still know there's a lot of things that I do not understand, and that I will, I'm open to the idea that I don't understand, but people have experiences, and some things are completely unmistakable that happen to people. So the supernatural is, in my opinion, completely undeniable. So I just try not to let it scare me and recognize that there's things, but when you work in historic sites, early on you recognize, what? There's something to this. I mean, there's energy. We know that people, when they die, they have energy, and that energy goes somewhere. So maybe part of it's here, and maybe part of it goes up to heaven. Maybe part of it I mean, who knows? It's just really, it's really interesting. But people that I really believe people when they say that they see recurring things. Because if someone really loves where they were, why wouldn't they come back? I mean, if I was Walt Disney, I'd hang out in Disney World all the time. I mean, I don't want to be disrespectful, but it's the happiest place in the world. Of course, he doesn't want to leave. But yeah, I think it's interesting to see how many historic sites have recurring experiences from people who've come. Yeah, it's really interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, at the site that I'm going to be at tomorrow for the Hydra Fall Festival. Depreciation Lands Museum, they actually have a resident ghost there called the Deacon.
Ooh.
And he's a benevolent ghost. He's not somebody. He's actually, like I said, he's a deacon. So he was I believe he was said to be the deacon of. There's a church that's like actually an old Baptist church that's like actually right down the road from the Depreciation Lands Museum. Mm-hmm. And there's stories about him, basically like helping somebody when they were about to fall off a ladder as they were fixing something in the church. And yes, and every year on the lantern tours, they have like this thing where, can you spot the deacon? And like one of the board members' husband, he usually dresses up as the deacon and, keeps himself in shadow and, stands like
That's
dresses
cute.
up as like people have described the deacon to be and everything. So so there's a ghost there. And there was also at that particular site, on one of the lantern tours one year, now I didn't experience this, somebody else did. They said that, some of the people, like the groups that went through, like the lantern tours, they went into the tavern because after the tour, you can go into the tavern for like hot chocolate, cookies, hot cider, things like that. So there was a group of people that went through for went through the tavern, went through the tours and everything, and they came into the tavern, and they saw a man, dressed in 18th century attire, and said hello to them, and and of course the people said hello back, and when they went outside, they told one of the other people working that were giving the tours and working the event, saying, "Oh yeah, we just saw one of your tour guides or something in there, one of your actors or in there," and they were like, and the person was like, "Oh, who?"
No one's in there.
They were like, "Oh, who?" And they were like, and they described him, and the person that one of the people working the event, they were like, "There's nobody that looks like that." And they were like, "Oh yeah, well we took because they asked the person that they encountered if they could take a photo, and the person was like, "Oh, yes," and and they were like, "Oh no, we took a photo of him." And when they showed like the person working the event, their phone, there was just an orb where
that's crazy. Oh yeah. Oh my gosh.
I know, isn't that crazy?
That's bonkers. That's so cool.
I know. Yes. Yeah. So it wasn't the deacon. It was somebody else. Yeah.
I've heard many a story like that at historic places, especially. I mean, and you hear those types of stories a lot. It's like, yeah, we had this the Powell house I was telling you about. The very first story I ever heard after volunteering there for a long time was that one of my closest friends' younger brothers was there, when they were preparing for an event. They always had garden parties and fundraisers, right? The kid, her youngest brother, was running in and out of the back portion of the house where there's modern additions, and there's a bathroom back there. And you know how they add modern additions to an old house to service the public bathrooms. And so the kid was just running in and out all day. At one point he says to his sister and everybody else, he's like, "Who's that lady in black running around inside the house?" And we're like, and everyone was just, I wasn't there, but it was the sort of situation where
Yeah.
Like, who? What are you talking about? And he sort of describes this person, and he was like 5 years old at the time, right? So he describes this
Right.
person, and it was very clearly, most likely, one of the Powell women from the 1790s or early 1800s, because he described her in this. He described her like she's wearing this black veil. It was not over her face. It was back over her head. And the Powells lost it. Apparently, like one of the children died very early on in that era. And so all these people piece this together, but it was like, I believe it because it was literally a child that I knew who I knew wouldn't have made up a story. He just kept, because it was like that situation where he goes, well, I was just having this conversation with this lady, and they were like trying to figure out who it was, because he said, oh, she was talking about the fact that she just lost her, that she was looking for her child and she lost her child, but he was describing it as lost her child, like she was looking for her child, but then they all put it together that she was looking for her lost, dead child. I mean, eerie, right? And by the time everyone realized what was going on, they were kind of like, oh no, but she was seen a lot in that period.
Right.
So, yeah.
Wow. Yeah,
crazy. Just crazy.
That is crazy.
Yeah, but it's like they always say out of the mouths of children. Like kids can tell tales, but kids often just see things and then they'll walk in and just kind of feel like where babies come from? What's that lady in there? What's she doing? Like, they're so innocent. They're just like, what's that person? Is that and then you realize later it's like maybe they did see something, or oh, it's just mind blowing. It is pretty interesting.
Oh, yeah.
Those sorts of stories abound.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Have you ever experienced anything at Fort Frederick when you were there?
I haven't. The only things I've experienced at Fort Fred are crazy weather. But other than that, like, I don't spend a lot of time. Sadly, I'd love to spend more time in the barracks and in the actual fort, but I'm always, sort of parked and camped right outside the entrance.
Right. Yeah.
I will say that there's like a sense of like being so close to the fort. I do feel, I don't want to say it's energy, but I do feel like there's different areas of that fort and that ground where you just feel sort of like, when you go to, you can't describe it, but like you go to certain places, like my first time ever in Devil's Den in Gettysburg, I was young. Ooh, and I was like depressed, and my parents kept saying, what is wrong with you? Like, why are you okay? Right. And the whole day I was walking around, like, I understood as a child what had happened there, but I could sense the energy and the death, and, it was really awful. I just remember being kind of sick to my stomach all day, and later I looked back and thought, well, no wonder. But Fort Fred, I always get a pretty good vibe from. But I feel like there's energy there. I feel like there's energy there,
especially if you go into the fort and the barracks at night. Same thing with Fort Niagara. There's definitely like energies there.
There's an imprint there. Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
And I know that Fort Niagara definitely has its stories. I haven't personally experienced anything there. But I have, like, I've felt stuff, but I've not actually, I haven't had anything that you could say is an experience there. I know that this other woman in the costuming world, her name is Time Traveling Native. Oh, yeah. And I hung out with her for a bit at Penn's Colony just recently. And she actually lives near Fort Niagara, and like she said, like, she's seen stuff there, and people she knows have seen stuff there too, and so, and of course there's also this story about the headless ghost that
I have heard that. Yeah. That's the only thing I know about Niagara. I've been up a couple times, but I have heard that there are a lot of people that have had some just kind of eerie, nothing like earth-shattering, but just like when they've slept in the sort of catacombs.
Right.
And they've had, I've heard about the headless ghost. Yeah, it's pretty wild. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so, of course. Yeah.
They're all brave. You're all brave to sleep up there, because last time I went to Niagara was in 2003, and I did sleep there, but in a small tent on the sort of green out front. But a lot of other people were sleeping in all the barracks and all the different. I just remember them being like the stone rooms, like they were just like really beautiful but eerie, and everybody that had slept in there. So the one night was sort of like, didn't sleep very well. It was kind of cold and spooky.
It is on my bucket list to sleep in, because especially since I'm starting to do the soldier thing now too. It's on my bucket list to sleep in like the barracks, whether it's Fort Frederick, Fort Niagara. Yeah, that's like on like the bucket list of things I want to do.
Yeah.
Sleep in the barracks.
Like years ago, it's kind of like, no, it's almost like guys are like, why would you want to sleep in the barracks? We're all like, we want to sleep in the barracks because it's a fun experience. Yeah, it's like it's a neat experience. I think it's the only place historic that I ever slept that was kind of like that was Fort Mifflin years ago, and it had that kind of feel of very eerie and that kind of just being in another world. But it also, the effect of that was kind of ruined by the fact that Fort Mifflin, beautiful as it is kind of like here, and the Philadelphia airport is like here, and the planes don't like fly basically like boom every 5 minutes, and you're just like, oh, the ambiance is kind of not so much, but it's still a beautiful fort. I mean, and so the joke was, everyone, when you're at Fort Mifflin, everyone goes, why did they build the fort so close to the airport? And we're like, oh, well, because, the airport wasn't here in the Rev War period. We try not to look like, mean when we say it. We're like, remember, airports didn't exist. And so blame blame the airport for putting them so close to the, but it's just cute. People would just sort of say, it's like, instead of saying, I wonder why they put the airport so close to the fort, they're like, why did they build the fort so close to the airport? It's just really funny. Yeah,
because the airport was around, 200 years ago or whatever.
Right? So, that was
Yeah, well, of course, there's always, like, the questions that you get from people, why did they put the fort so close to the airport?
Right, like we talked about before, it's definitely part of that, because, like, you realize people are genuinely, it's just that, like, they don't think before they speak, because a lot of us are guilty about it, just every day we kind of go, I wonder why, blah, 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 but it's, like, it's really funny, the things that people ask you or say when you're at a site, they'll be like, so, why did they do this or that? But until they've thought about it, they usually just sort of spit it out, and then they realize later, oh gosh, that must have sounded stupid. But it is really funny. We're all guilty of that, but it is funny sometimes the things you hear, right? It's just like, the airport wasn't here. Yeah, so it's
especially like if you participate in a battle, or are you guys really going to shoot each other?
Right.
Like,
Isn't this really dangerous? Like, are those real bullets? And we're just like, well, no, they're charges, but they're not real bullets. And it's just cute. Yeah, but I mean, it is adorable.
I know. Same thing with, like, if you're working the cannons and everything, firing the cannons, artillery.
But how are you not killing all those people? And you're like, well, there's not a real, it's a charge, but there's no, like, ammo in there. There's no cannonball. And they go, they're like, it's hard to understand. Do you know what? I wonder why don't we get asked more? Is like pertinent to this conversation, for example, and all of you can chime in too that are watching. So, for example, when you're working at a historic site and you're giving a tour and all the things we normally do, cooking, whatever, why don't we do, I mean, people do ask, is it haunted? But I don't get that as much as are you hot? Well, I'm hot. We all know that sort of hilarious, like, are you hot? Are you uncomfortable? It's a really basic question. People genuinely want to know what it's like because they're not brave enough maybe to put on the clothing and experience it. But it's cute. I don't get asked as much as I would think, is this haunted? I think some people are scared. They're scared to ask, right? They're scared to, like, and also they're afraid of offending you.
Yeah, I mean, I've been asked a couple times, especially at the John Neville house, if it's haunted. It's really interesting now that you mention it, how you don't really get asked that much, and you would think that would be on a lot of people's minds. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know, right? I mean, you go to a place like, I think, like, you mentioned Gettysburg before. It was like, of course Gettysburg is haunted, Yeah.
It's like, answer, yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Is this haunted?
Yeah.
Yes.
Uh-huh. And I don't know, this is a book on the spirits of the Farnsworth House Inn. Have you ever been to the Farnsworth House?
Mm-hmm. I would like to get my husband to sleep there at least once before we kick off this mortal coil, as they say, because we live so close to Gettysburg, and like you, we go a lot. We love Gettysburg, and we've had breakfast, dinner, lunch there at the various restaurants, and we always love it, and it's beautiful. A friend of mine stayed many years ago, had some very interesting experiences, and I really, really do want to stay, and he's kind of worried that we'll bring something home with us. So he doesn't really want to go. That just happens sometimes. People, they get a familiar spirit, something clings on someone, and next thing you know, they go home, and it's kind of interesting. I'd still like to do it. I've read a lot on Farnsworth. It is amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I have stayed overnight in Gettysburg. I've not stayed at the Farnsworth house, though.
Where'd you stay? I'm curious. Yeah. Maybe we should just do it together, because my husband's like, I'm not doing it. I'm not staying. You're crazy. Go there. We should get a bunch of girls. Get a bunch of girls together.
There you go. All right.
Haunted night. Who wants to hang out with us at the Farnsworth?
Yeah, I know. We'll do it. So
message us. Yeah, so we're crazy.
Of course. I've stayed at the Brechtel Victorian Mansion. It's just outside of the town.
Yes.
And I've also stayed at a Sentimental Journey bed and breakfast.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where I've stayed. I've had dinner at the Farnsworth House. I've been on a few ghost tours at the Farnsworth House. And one of the things I want to do when I go back, because they actually do like paranormal, like ghost hunts and everything, I'd like to do that. It's on my bucket list to stay in the Farnsworth House, but I would not want to do it by myself.
That's what I mean. We got to get a group of like-minded. Yeah, exactly. I wouldn't either.
Because some of the, maybe if like the spirits were all like friendly, I wouldn't mind, but
there's
like,
a few that are nasty. I'm told that at Farnsworth, there's a couple that are like
Harvey
again.
Sweeney? Yeah. Harvey Sweeney, I've heard stuff like just from people that have stayed in the Harvey Sweeney room, like waking up to him, like, because apparently he was a very, very, very evil, vile man.
Yeah, violent,
Yeah, and so like they've woken up to him like screaming in their ear and just, grabbing their ankles on the bed. And yeah.
No, thank you. No, thank you. I want to stay in the room with the child, the one with the child in, and I'll be like, I'll stay with the child ghost. Y'all go over there with Mr. Sweeney because he's not.
Yeah. There's also the Sarah Black room that has the wedding dress in it, and supposedly at night the wedding dress actually comes to life and starts moving around.
Oh.
There's a picture of the wedding dress in here.
It's scary.
I'm gonna find it.
Oh, I have the mother of all ghost stories that I'll save for the end if y'all are listening and you really want. I mean, like actual real experience to do with Key West ghosts. I'll tell you that. Yeah, but it's almost as scary as this one.
This is the wedding dress, in the Sarah Black room.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I'm thinking maybe I would stay in the Sarah Black room, perhaps, because I would just be very. I don't know. That dress sparks a curiosity within me. So what?
Yeah.
But I wouldn't want to stay there by myself, though, It's like, yeah.
Well, the dress almost feels like more innocuous compared to Mr. Sweeney, so, But, if I woke up in the middle of the night and saw a wedding gown kind of moving around or something, I mean, I would probably literally, like, run out the door. Actually, I don't think I'd run. I'd get, like, when I get scared, I don't know about you, Tiffany, when I get scared, I just freeze. So if a bear was coming at me, I'd just be like, I'm dinner. I can't move. It's not going to end well.
Uh-huh.
Because I tend to do that thing where I just get so like we're all trying to analyze like this isn't really happening.
Right.
I'm not really seeing that gown move. That's not really happening. Yeah.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
I don't know. But the friend of mine that stayed in, I don't know which room she stayed in, but she stayed there in sometime in the mid 90s. And hey guys, and long story short, she left a bunch of, as they say, trigger objects, right? So she stayed in the Farnsworth in one of the rooms, and she set out. She did her research, too. She knew about all the ghosts that were supposedly there.
Yeah,
and
like
she
the child is using toys for him,
That's what she did. She left it, like, a child's thing for the children. She left something for, I remember, because she was the first one who really told me about Sweeney. And then all the years of going there and realizing Sweeney's Tavern, I was like, ooh, and I read a couple books on it. And, so I knew about him specifically, but she left things for each sort of the ghosts. And in the middle of the night, she did she did that thing where she like dusted the area with like, I don't know, talcum powder or something, so you could tell if it moved. And according to her, and she took all kind of pictures, and again, who really knows? She might have just been, she could have been doing it for her own whatever fun, but I mean, she claimed that some of the things moved, and I was like, I'm not surprised by that when you consider how many people have been through there. But yeah, it's pretty wild. She didn't sleep, though. She pretty much sat up all night and sort of, I think she must have slept and she must have drifted in and out of sleep, but she claimed that several things happened and it just sort of, the room just wasn't quiet. And she could hear just strange things going on more than like, and always like between 2 and 4 in the morning. It's always interesting that way. So after she told me that, I wasn't too keen to go back and like stay there. I was like, that's it. I'm good. I don't really think I want to stay there.
But a lot of tours end in the cellar, And the cellar
Mm-hmm.
is pretty creepy down there. And they say the further back you sit in the cellar, you're more likely to experience something. So I always sit in the back. And I mean, like I said, it's one of those things where it's like you feel an energy, but
Yeah.
I've not experienced anything. But I did experience one thing. There was something on a ghost tour that we ended up at one of the battlefields. And, and this was at night, obviously. So there's no reenactments or anything going on.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm there with a friend of mine, and we're just like, and everybody's, just on the tour guide's, talking, doing her thing. And we all start hearing what sounds like cannons being fired across the battlefield.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, and there was that's the thing, like there were no reenactments, no fireworks, nothing that could really explain. There were no speakers or anything around to add some effect, like there was nothing to really explain what that was. And at first I think nobody wanted to say anything,
Mm-hmm.
like,
You're like, what is that? What is that? Are you hearing that? Like,
yeah. And then suddenly, somebody did speak up, and and we're like, they're like, did you hear that? That sounds like cannons. And then finally everybody else was like, yeah, like, and we're just all like, oh my gosh, like are we hearing like actual cannons from like the Battle of Gettysburg and everything? So
yeah, right.
Yeah.
It's what they call it, it's like an energy memory where basically like all of a sudden you get sound phenomenon from something that's been long gone. And it is crazy. Just sort of like, the voices when people have those recorders and they leave them and you just hear like hello, I'm here, and you're like, okay. Yeah, like it's really that simple. It's like something that happens and someone's trying, someone's just trying to get your attention. But I have, that's crazy.
Yeah.
I've never heard sound phenomenon quite like that. The only thing I've ever heard has just been like little audible things that are kind of strange, but you're not quite sure what they are. But yeah, I wouldn't like, oh my goodness, Gettysburg, I wouldn't put anything past what the energy that's there. I mean, you hear people talk about all sorts of things like that.
Yeah. Oh, I know. It's pretty crazy. So what are your favorite ghost stories that like maybe like you haven't necessarily experienced but you've heard about? Like that come from like history sites and all that stuff?
Well, it's interesting. Yeah, I have like my favorite, actually I do have like a personal story attached to it. So I could tell you about that one. My favorite ghost story was, I got really fascinated with Key West because years ago now, I don't know if you've been to Key West, Tiffany, but it's a really haunted area too.
Oh,
so
okay.
Yeah, it's up there with sort of like the top haunted places in the world. And so we went, I took my honeymoon there in 2003, and then some really good friends of ours, Sarah, who had hopped on earlier. I'm not sure if Sarah's still here. But she and her husband got married in Key West the following summer. So we were there like 2 summers in a row. The first summer I was there, there was this, and I should have looked it up right before I got on with you, but a lot of people will probably know about the story because Zach Bagans on Ghost Adventures actually bought this haunted doll for his museum recently, right?
Oh, okay.
And this doll is like the creepiest doll in the world, and it was known as like this creepy. And I don't even remember the name of the doll, but if you heard it, you would know it. So first time we went to Key West, we heard about the ghost stories and went on a ghost tour too. And I was fascinated because this story was of a woman who was working in a household, and it was probably turn of the 20th century. She bought this doll for this child that she took care of in a family, and this doll was reported. Like, I don't even say it because I'm not even gonna like. I don't even want the energy drawn. It's something. Just you could like Google it. Yeah, it's like his name begins with an R, and I'm not even gonna say it because apparently like you can talk about this thing and it gets creepy. So she gave him this doll, and no one really knows if she gave it to him to jinx him or to bless him. But this doll would be like seen at the window in the house when people weren't there. Right? Crazy. And I don't remember what happened to the child. I mean, I think he grew up okay, but the point was it was just a really weird thing where people would see this doll and people would see things happen, right? So years later, the doll survives and gets put in this certain museum in Key West.
I I know what you're talking about.
Right? And so there's all this phenomenon to do with the doll, where people would take pictures of him, and then the camera would break, or the film would get
I know
exposed.
what you're talking about.
Okay, right? So here's where it gets really creepy. So I was just like really interested. I've always been interested in ghost stories, like you, like a lot of people. So when we left for honeymoon that year, I bought this book. Did you know I bought this book, and it had the story of him, and there was sort of like, the touristy books you buy. So we buy it, and I'm on the way home, and I get home that summer. I remember reading through the whole book because it was just like, oh, this is the new book. I'm going to read about this. Well, here's where it gets interesting. So he's known for creating strange phenomena with things going missing, things breaking. Right. My husband, we fly back on the plane, and we had to have his ID to fly home. So I know he had it when he flew home. But when we got back to New Jersey, which was where we were living down the shore at the time, Tiffany, his ID went missing, right? So it wasn't that unusual. Like we thought, well, maybe he left, like when you're in the airport, you were constantly you're still getting your ID out all the time, right? So you get your ID out. But I figured he was like, oh, darn it, I lost it. So we lost his ID somewhere, right? We know it was lost. It was lost. Wow. We didn't think much of it. But a few days later, and I'm trying to remember exactly the series of events, but what I do remember with actually, it was vivid. Barry said, I need to go to the DMV and get a new ID because I'm going to have to go to this party down here. He was a lifeguard at the time. They would go to a lot of parties and a lot of bars and things. He was, not a partier, but anyway, he knew he had to have his ID to get in this bar. So he was going to go get his ID. He didn't have enough time. He showed up at this bar and for like an after party for somebody's birthday. He gets to the door and he knows he's going to get asked, because he was in his early 30s then, so he was going to get carded. Yeah. Okay. He said to me, I kid you not, he said, he came home later that night, he was spooked, because here's what happened. He got to the door, and they said, we need to see your ID. So he's opening up his wallet, and he's thinking, I'm going to have to tell them, it's going to sound like a sob story, like, I don't have my ID with me. But, all these people can vouch for me, or whatever. He has, like, his social security card. I don't know. He knew at that point he was probably going to have to turn around and come home. Guess what was in his wallet?
His ID.
Yeah, and here's what makes it creepy. So earlier that day, I threw out the book. I threw out the book about Mr. the Doll. Because we'd figured out earlier that there might have been a connection. I know it sounds that crazy, but I literally said to him, like, it had been about a week, and I said, on the front of the book was a picture of this doll. And this doll was known to cause phenomena. And I was just like, you know what? I think we should throw out the book. So on the way to somewhere earlier that day, we had thrown the book out, but I kid you not, I swear, this God's honest truth, we didn't throw it out at home. We didn't even want it near the house. We threw out the book in a dumpster behind some, it was like a Wawa or something.
Okay.
Because we didn't want it anywhere near us. And it was later that evening that his ID showed up. So after that all happened, we were a little creeped out. And then I started doing some more research. I hopped online, and I was just, it was early days of the internet, too. This was like 20 years ago. So I'm looking. And apparently when people would take pictures of this doll and do different, like if they get rid of the pictures, it was very common for this to happen. So after that experience, I'm not surprised by anything. I'm not. Right. It was the creepiest thing. So that is the story that fascinates me the most, is like, I wonder what that doll really is. But he continues to cause problems, and Zach Bagans owns him. And I'm like, you're brave, dude, because I wouldn't want that thing anywhere near me. We didn't even go to the museum to look at him. But that's probably my sort of favorite creepy story, because it to me, it came true. So, totally weird.
Well, even the story behind that particular doll, it's really, really strange.
Very weird. Yeah. People think she gave the doll to him to protect him, because the doll did seem to be almost like an it's just creepy. It even makes me think as I talk about it, but it's like, it is totally, so if you're all interested, just like Google it. It's just like, it's like the most haunted doll in the world.
In West Florida,
Yeah, and, nuts.
Yeah, and apparently the guy, the kid who owned that doll, he grew up and I think he married a couple times, because his wives were all like freaked out by the attachment that he had to the doll.
Yeah, there was something about that, wasn't there? I remember saying, I just remember enough to know, like, there was something weird about he was always connected with it, and it was charm. It was charmed. Yeah. Yeah, and I guess his marriages never lasted, because his wives were like, get rid of the doll. Get rid of this doll!
Like, no.
It's crazy.
And his wives were like, you're you're freaking me out. So they left, you know?
I don't blame them. I mean, like 5 minutes with that book in my house, and I was a bit like, I don't like this book. I went,
Yeah.
he's like, did you
Yeah.
finish reading it? I'm
Yeah.
like, yeah. He's like, let's throw it out. Okay, good. We'll throw it out. I
Well,
don't
that
know.
the museum that the doll is at, they actually sell replicas of the doll, and I was very tempted to buy one, but I'm like, I don't know, because even though it's
Yeah.
just a replica, it's not like the
Mm-hmm.
actual doll.
But
It's still
still,
like,
it still carries a bit of like, it's kind of like, I don't know, something really violent. Would you want something? I mean, we
yeah,
all have our own tastes, and sometimes things don't have to, you don't have to assign something just because something is, like again, like if something's beautiful but something tragic happened, it doesn't necessarily
right.
follow that thing shouldn't
Oh
be loved.
yeah,
Yeah, loved or adored, but I'm a bit like, yeah, I think I'm
yeah,
okay. I'll
yeah,
just, I'll just wave at you while I walk away.
yeah,
Yeah, no, I wouldn't want to
yeah.
buy it.
Oh gosh, yeah,
Oh.
yeah. And you need to like ask him permission to take his photo, and
You know
yeah.
exactly what I'm talking about. Yeah, there's a whole lot of stuff associated with that. Oh, yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've done a little reading on, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but that's definitely anything to do with dolls is just
Oh,
like
creepy. Yes.
so creepy
Yes.
because they're like an innocuous object, they're supposed to be, for
Yeah.
children to, love, have a little bit of like a playmate before they actually go out into the world, go to school and start like making human friends,
Yes.
you know, but there's just something about dolls and even like children like having imaginary friends. That's another one.
Mm-hmm.
And I've
Mm-hmm.
seen a few stories where like the child, children, and of course the parents are first like, oh, every child has an imaginary friend, that's nothing unusual, which for the most part it isn't.
Mm-hmm.
But then there were times when like, I mean, I'm sure you've heard stories about how the child would like draw pictures of the family and there would be like this kind of weird little dark object off somewhere or some like menacing looking creature like off in the corner and the parents would be like, who's that or what's that?
Mm-hmm.
They're like, oh, that's Rachel or whatever. That's my imaginary, that's my friend that I'm always talking to. And it's like, yeah. Yeah, anything
Scary.
surrounding, yeah, but dolls are just like, yeah, I don't know. There's just something about stories surrounding dolls that just like really,
And a
especially like
lot
the
of
really
people,
old
yes.
antique dolls. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. A lot of people say the dolls are like the creepiest thing. Like, there's that. Have you heard about that Island of the Dolls? A lot of people have seen that.
I
There's like
have.
this. Okay, yeah, that freaked me
Yeah.
out. I was like, oh my gosh, yes, that's kind of how I feel about dolls myself. It was cute. Um, when we all like dolls when we're young. Most girls like
Of
dolls, but
course. Yeah.
I got over that doll phase really quickly because as soon as I was like a teenager or I don't know, tweenie, I
Mhm.
was just like, I don't know. I just find things with a human image to be sometimes a little creepy. So I think that
Yeah.
maybe part of it is that like maybe that's just it. Like spirits maybe assign themselves to dolls because they're
Right.
familiar or something. But there does seem to be some sort of really creepy thing about dolls sometimes. And
Yeah.
I've never been like oddly put off, but I can't say I like them. And I saw that story about the
Yeah.
island of the dolls, and I was like, oh yeah, I'm done. I'm good. I don't need any dolls around me. I don't need dolls.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I do have a couple of like older like dolls that like belong to my grandmother and my mom and everything. But yeah, but it's just like, I don't know, the idea of getting like another like kind of antique doll, it's older doll, vintage doll, whatever you want to call it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's just kind of like, I don't know. I mean, I kept the
Yeah.
ones that belonged to my mom and grandma when they were little because it was my mom and grandma, It's like,
Yeah.
hey,
Oh yeah.
you know,
Yeah. We all keep some stuff like that. I mean, sometimes you just
yeah,
inherit things, and you're like, oh, this is beautiful. I'll put this away and get it out every so
yeah.
often. Look at it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah, and and my mom's not using that doll, so I was just like, okay, yeah, it's kind of cool. I can have it for, my, I guess it's in storage right now, but whenever I move into a larger place, it'll be, I don't know, I'll have it somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Or I'll use it for, I don't know, one of my videos, I don't know, and then there's this, bride doll that I have. It's kind of creepy. It
Mm-hmm.
belonged to, I think it was, I want to say it was either my grandma's or a friend of my because you know how like sometimes like they're like somebody's like a very close friend of the family, you call them aunt, or
Yeah.
you might still call them aunt or grandma, you know, even though they're not your aunt or
Oh
grandma
yeah.
like by
Yeah.
blood. Yeah, it was either my grandma's doll or one of her friends' doll that like we still like we called her grandma because she was so close to my grandma and close friends of the family and everything.
Yep.
Um, yeah, but I do like, but yeah, it's like it's a bride doll, and it's kind of creepy looking because it's like it has like that kind of old, you know, kind of very vintage look to it and everything. And
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I haven't had any experiences with them, but you know, but it's still like I said, like if I ever like, you know, I guess did something where I needed a creepy doll, I would use
You've
those.
got
You
it.
know?
People say
Yeah,
you
yeah,
could set up dolls, and sometimes that's the thing people find that they move. Even in like happy households, they might be. It's like the one thing that somehow
yeah.
tends to shift a little bit. So I don't know. You could set it out and almost see if anything happens. But
Yeah. Yeah, and there was a time when I wanted to own an antique ventriloquist dummy.
oh
I don't really want I don't know if I want to now, but I did go through, you know, like that kind of, you know, goth phase where I just wanted to be I want everything creepy and all that
yeah,
stuff. And
yeah, I understand.
you know, and so yeah, and so I was just like you know, so yeah, what I was like I want to own a antique ventriloquist dummy and everything. And
Wow. And
I
if something was going to be haunted, I'm telling you, it would probably be
of
that.
course,
That would
yeah,
be freaky creepy. Yeah.
yeah,
Oh.
yeah, like I'd be kind of freaked out if like say I sat it somewhere in the house in the apartment, then I went to sleep, and then I woke up and it would be sitting there like that would kind of creep me out.
Yeah.
I might be a little worried.
I would
So
at that point I'd be like, okay, we're gonna have a talk here, mister, because
yeah,
you're freaking me
you
out.
stay. You stay over there.
Yeah, go over there.
Yeah.
No, thank you. Yeah. Oh.
uh,
I find it in my house I creep people out, like the builders that occasionally come work on my house every 5 years or so. I need a
yeah.
builder in. I've got one right now, and like he went up to the attic, and I've got one of many mannequins because being a fashion designer down the years, I've got like vintage mannequins, and then I have like a modern mannequin, and then I've got dress forms. Yeah, the attic's full of crazy things. The basement's full of crazy things. So it was just funny the other day because Rich went up there and he was just like, ah! And I was like, you okay? He's like, I
They
got
think it's
totally.
a person, you
He
know?
got totally spooked. This thing, she's like kind of draped, but
Oh
she's half
man.
naked, and like she's 7 foot tall. It's ridiculous. So like he's just sort of like, wow. He went up to the
Yeah.
attic, to check on, to basically like to fish some stuff down into the room he's working on. And
Right.
he's like freaking out. I'm like, oh, I'm sorry, I forgot to mention that there's some creepy mannequins in the attic. So
Like, ooh.
he got the fright of his life, and he was laughing. He's like, leave it to you. I'm like, I know. So you don't just get spooked here, you get spooked with like creepy vintage
Yeah.
mannequins. Yeah, but that
Oh
was
yeah.
pretty. They're almost as bad as dolls. Yeah, and
Yeah.
they have such a look of
Mannequins.
yeah, they have such a look of the decade that they're from, and so everything, no matter how it is, like every movie decade has a look, even though we try to make it
Oh
look
yeah.
period, it doesn't really work.
Yeah.
But it was kind of freaky how you look at these things after time and you're like, oh, that thing really creeps me out.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it really
Yeah.
freaked him
Hi
out.
Carla.
He was like, oh my
Yeah.
gosh, and I'm like, yeah, sorry, I should have mentioned all the mannequins in the attic.
Like,
Just
oops.
disclaimer, when you work at my house, you'll get spooked by the strangest things. Yes. So
Mhm. Yeah, yeah,
that was
mannequins
funny.
are quite creepy too, I think.
I keep their
And
heads
I
covered down here
know,
in the studio. I can't stand looking at them. They creep me out. Yeah.
yeah. Well, there's always like those stories of, hey Carla. There's always those stories about, you know, people. I mean, shopping malls aren't necessarily as prevalent, you know, as they were like 10, 20 years ago and everything, but love the creepy. Oh yeah, so do we. That's what we're talking about. So, but and her
Yeah.
pumpkin.
Yeah, my creepy
Yeah,
pumpkin.
but there's always that story about, you know, like there's like kind of older stories, especially about like, you know, getting locked in the mall or something like
Yes.
that. And, you know, and then just like, you know, having the mannequins come to life and, you know,
Yeah.
that's the subject of so many like
Oh my gosh.
movies and books and yeah.
No, my mother worked in a department store like a lot of women in the 20th century. She spent a lot of time in a couple stores in a big mall in the 70s and 80s and into the 90s. And like, oh my goodness, the story she used to tell about sometimes the guys that were like the security guards would freak out and think that the mannequins were moving. And sometimes they were. They were like, arm would fall off in the middle of the night and they'd be like spooked and they'd run halfway across they'd be like out of there. Like grown men with guns were like freaking out because
They're running out.
the story's like, oh my god, the mannequin. So it's really true. It's really funny. But she had just like some strange stories about just about things moving. She did find that she would go and she would be the, how like when you have a job and you close, as they say, like you would close the location wherever you are. Maybe you're working at like a Rudders, maybe it doesn't matter where you close, you're closed.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. You were the last one in, but you're in the next morning. Like mom would have a lot of shifts where she was there at night, then she'd come back the next morning, and stuff would be moved. She knew nobody else could be in there. Nobody else had the keys. So it's like, what happened? Who did the moving? So haunted, like malls were, who knows what, I always think about if a mall was haunted, what land is it on? And that's the thing about what was disturbed to build that mall. And that's where my brain always led, even as a child. But she used to say, oh yeah, no, that big building, there's a lot of weird things that went on there. And she didn't like closing. Nobody likes closing because then you have to like, well, at those days you had to walk the money. Like you had a big stack of money and like those old bank bags where you'd fill the bank bag with all the like the old like with the credit cards and all that cash, and you have to walk all the way down. There was always a bank or three in the mall, and you go down to the safe deposit box. It was on the outside. Because, we're older than dirt now. Kids now are like, what? Paper money? No, I'm kidding. I'm not teasing you guys, like, too badly. But, like, we grew up in the age when there was, like, no cell phones, no this, no that. And you literally had to, like, walk the money and the credit card slips. And she would get really freaked out, even having to do that because it was a huge responsibility. But along the way, she was just like, oh, that mall was creepy. I hate doing this. But she'd come back every morning, and there would be things that would be, like, just moved. And so she always sort of was like, all right, whatever. I'm getting on with that, but it was interesting.
There used to be, I think a few years ago, there used to be a website. I don't know if it's still around now, but it's called abandonedmalls.com.
Oh, I have seen that. It's totally creepy. Yes, you have to check out abandoned malls. Yes.
I know. It's just kind of like it's so they are creepy looking when there's like nothing. Same thing with old amusement parks.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Yeah.
Well, all the energy that's left behind, like an amusement park or a mall, I think for me, I think that's the whole, like, place memory. It's, like, all the stuff that happened, and not necessarily dead spirits, but just, like, energy that's left.
Yeah.
Yeah, but, oh, yeah. People talk about the old amusement parks that are shut and how the rides will still, like, there's no energy to a ride, and it's still going, and you read about those stories, and you're like, oh, my God.
Yeah.
Yeah. Crazy.
Yeah, like, just looking, because I've seen pictures of old abandoned amusement parks and everything, and it's, and then, like, you do hear those stories about, how they're still moving, or, like, so, just stuff will start up and everything, and, it's just, like, how, because obviously it hasn't been running for quite some time, and I would especially be intrigued by, like, because, every amusement park has, like, its haunted house, haunted attraction.
Right.
And I would be definitely intrigued. It's like, I don't know, on the one hand, I'd be a little bit scared to go into one of those old abandoned haunted attraction houses, but at the same time, it would be kind of cool,
I think so, too.
Especially, like, the older one, because I think, there's just something about, especially if you look at, like, Halloween costumes, like, from the 1930s and 20s, and, like, they're so, like, simple, but very, very creepy. And Carla, I'll go check it out. So call me if you guys want to go. Sure, we'll make it a road trip. Why not?
Absolutely. I'm game. Why not? It'll be fun.
Yeah. But like, and so especially it's, if you, like, go into, like, say, what, like, especially, like, an older amusement park that has been around, especially since, at least maybe the mid-20th century, and you see some, like, it's, like, on the one hand, like, it's, like, the stuff is so kind of simple and archaic looking, but then they're also so creepy looking at the same time, and sometimes even more creepy than the more, technologically advanced stuff that's like the holograms and all that stuff that's very prevalent today.
Oh, I think the early stuff's much creepier and fun because there's something nice about the old school. Sometimes the new technology is almost like it's so good that it's bad. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It's so like realistic that it's like it has no charm. But then my husband put it well the other day, and I think a lot of us can relate when she said, "I do not like anything modern."
Yeah.
I do not like I'm sure there's some exceptions. We like medicine. We like
having our phones.
Right.
Let's admit that.
But beyond that, like modern fashion, modern this. No, don't like it. I want vintage. I want old stuff. So yeah, it looks, and you're right. It's like and Carla just said it. So there's something really authentic and genuine about things that were made in previous decades to whatever we're living through right now. Because everything right now is genuinely very disposable. It's meant to be.
Yeah, Carla,
it's a different attitude.
Yeah. Earlier stuff is so genuine and looks more real. I agree. And I think that's what draws so many of us like history nerds to
absolutely
what we do. Yeah,
everything, whether it's like vintage clothing or vintage cars or vintage houses or you name it, and it just feels more it feels more real or permanent than honestly it's a strange thing, but I think when I pass I'll be much more comfortable than I am here because I'm not comfortable in my modern skin. I'm just not. I feel like I'm like an old soul stuck in a very modern body going, let me out, right? Let me out. Let me out.
Yeah, I don't know if you believe in like past lives or anything like that, but like, but sometimes it's like, I do feel like, especially when I go to a history site and it's like I feel like I've done it before almost,
Yeah, a lot of us see, and that's what they're saying too. A lot of us feel the same way. Absolutely. I'm a very strong, unapologetic Christian, but I do believe, and when I say unapologetic, I mean I really truly believe in the Creator, and I believe in the infallibility personally of the Bible because there's so much of it that's just pure history that to me it has to be, so much of it rings true. But my point is there's a lot I know about the spiritual realm I don't understand, but I somehow feel like I have a theory based on things that I've read and people's experiences. I believe God could possibly recycle our souls. That's my theory.
I do think that's a possibility.
Right?
I know some people would be like, no, that's blasphemous, but it's like, we don't know.
We don't really know, and there are some really interesting, there are some really interesting scriptural and also like literal historical sort of references that down the years I've read people that have written about this phenomenon of things happening in the world where sort of like knowledge drops down from whatever you want to call it, from the nether regions into pockets of the world all at the same time. Right. Phenomenon of like inventions, phenomenon of advancement, technology, medicine, whatever it is, right? So it's like the right people in the right place at the right time. Well, that could just be God's intervention of giving us what we need, but it also could be more deep. It could be more like the people, and like these people sometimes work so well together. It's almost as if they knew each other. But I have this neat theory that that's what he does because I'd like to believe that. Because that's what I've chosen to believe. But like, why not? Why not? I don't know.
Well, that's the thing. And if you really want to get deep and technical, like really kind of like delve deep into it, like, we're not given all the books of the Bible either.
Yeah, it's something it's interesting. I've read a lot about that down the years. I went to a private Christian school and I had a very traditional upbringing, but I also then went to a private non-religious college. And I have a lot of people in my family that have written actual seminarian books, like they published books that they use in seminary, and so I've had lots of deep conversations, and I think there's just so much. There's just so much. But it's like it's overwhelming at times. And I had a point. I was rambling there for a second. I had a point to what I was going to say, but I was going to agree with you because like there's so many things that we are not going to understand until we pass, and so along the way, it's like we have to be.
So you can't really say for sure, well, no, that's not what it is, just because we're not really told of it maybe in a lot of the dogma, that doesn't
There's a lot of knowledge that's been withheld. That's what I was going to say.
Exactly.
And you're right. There's a lot of knowledge that's been withheld from us. Yeah.
Well, because it is known that, like, especially in the early days, in the earlier parts of, like, Christianity and all that stuff, like in those earlier parts, that the people in power, they kept information from the plebes, from the common folk, you know, and in fact, they actually, there was some parts in some areas of Europe, they actually did not want any common person owning a Bible. Because they wanted to tell you what the Bible said.
Well, that's where our Reformation was so dangerous because, I mean, we all know that if it wasn't the Catholic Church, it would have been another entity, but people literally haven't been given, you know, that Latin wasn't taught in many cases, so you didn't know what was being said in the service, and you couldn't read the Bible because if you didn't speak Latin. So that was why it was so, utterly crazy that, like, throughout, doesn't matter what century you're in, there's a lot of information that you just don't have. So that's when you have to go on those three things. Like, you have to go on your faith, if you have it, and hopefully you do, because faith is really important, I think. Intuition and education. You have to educate yourself, you have to have faith, and then you have to use your intuition, use that common sense, God-given ability to be able to discern something. And I think that's really important no matter what decade you live in. So, but it's interesting. So, you know, you were asking me earlier when we got on the live stream, and some people, you know, I'll go kind of personal because I think it's the right season to do this. So for those of you who don't know, I lost my father earlier early in September. And you know, when you lose someone really close to you and they pass away, obviously there's just enormous amount of grief and then practical stuff you have to deal with. But then when you finally kind of slowly come out of that just bawling and screaming and yelling and asking God constantly why this person had to go, you recognize the little things around you that are really special, and you start looking for signs of things. And Dad said before he passed, he was in the hospital and he could sense someone like touching his hand when I wasn't there. And that was really amazing because it kind of just came out at a moment when he was like not being asked. He just sort of said, you know, when you're not here and the nurses aren't here, I know it's not a nurse. Someone touches my hand. And I was like, really? And he's like, yeah, someone, when I wake up sometimes I feel like a sensation of someone is holding my hand. And I was like, so after he passed, I was like genuinely so heartbroken. I was thinking back, I'm like, I think he had an angel with him or a family member sitting there holding his hand. It's right. So it's like, that's the neat part of it. So suddenly, like, we're in this season of sort of spooky, Halloween-y, and, you know, to be honest, like, there's like skeletons and coffins everywhere. And at first I just thought, oh God, I can't deal with this. Like, oh, there's death everywhere. And then I realized, no, you know what? Part of this is good because we have to be in touch with it.
Right.
It's a natural part of our life. It's something we got to deal with. But also I started thinking about the positive things of like, well, you know, he's here in my house. He was cremated, and Mom let me, you know, bring him home because I said I really wasn't ready to let him go yet. I don't think she was either. So it might sound creepy to some people, but he's upstairs and I talked to him. So I'm hoping he will haunt my house. I want him to haunt my house. I've told him, I'm like, you're welcome here.
Like
and
signs from Dad, you know?
I'm like, you need to like knock something over. All right, Dad, I need to know you're here. And it's sweet. I've had other friends tell me they've said things like, it's not crazy. Let's say, tell him that you want him to do something or come and visit, and they'll often just be something little, like maybe an indication in something every day that they're around. But it's like interesting to think about, you know, it starts making you think really deeply about your belief in whatever it is you believe, but definitely if you're a Christian or if you were practicing anything, and like your understanding of like the supernatural. And it's just interesting. Just something I've never lost. I haven't lost either of my parents until this point, and I'm very close with my parents, so it was a really, really awful thing to experience. But I'm also kind of excited to think, like, I know from my own experiences from other people that they can communicate somehow. I don't know why, and I don't know how, but I have a feeling at some point he'll communicate something to me. So I jokingly tell him, I'm like, okay, Dad, I'm going out. Make sure you know. Get some coffee. Go get some coffee. But anyway, I don't know. Might sound crazy, but I'm hoping he talks to me soon.
Yeah.
So let's see.
Well, my grandmother passed on back in 2019, and I have one of her lamps that she always had in her house, and it's one of those like touch lamps, but it has like a very kind of old vintage look to it and everything. But it's one of those touch lamps, and I have it on my nightstand up by my bed, and I've come home, or sometimes I'll just be doing something around my apartment, and I'll see a light go on in the bedroom, and I'm like, really? Or I'll leave and I'll be gone for the day. Then I'll come home and the light's not, like she left the light on for me or something, So
that's adorable. That's what I mean. That stuff really happens. The fact, now you said it was one of those touch lamps, right? Where the heat from your touch turns it on. Is that what you were saying? Yeah.
Yes.
That doesn't surprise me at all, because there's something about the heat and energy whenever there's a recurring haunting. I don't like the word haunting even. Yeah. I sometimes like presence.
Yes, there's a presence.
Yeah, there's a presence. Yeah.
Is spooky, scary. Presence is just comforting and not spooky, scary.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Comforting. Like some people say when they do lose a family member, they feel a presence, or they have a presence around them. I once many years ago didn't ask this friend of mine to read me, but I didn't realize that she could sense things, and she was like, "Who's Anna?" And I was like, "What?" She just kind of looked at me. She's like, "Who's Anna?" And I said, I was being totally clueless. I was like, "What do you mean, who's Anna?" She's like, "There's someone connected with you, and her name is Anna." And I said, "Oh, that would be my maternal grandmother, who I was very close to. Why?" And I was still kind of like, "What? Why are you asking?" And she's like, "Anna's with you all the time." And I was like, that's when I looked like a deer in the headlights. I was like, really? Okay. And then I thought about it for a second, and I was like, you know what? That makes sense, because I've always felt that there was something like a protective. So she's apparently my protective spirit or whatever. But it doesn't surprise me that your grandmother might leave the light on for you, because if she's got energy, then like to be able to turn on a touch lamp would make so much more sense than even being able to we know people can turn lights on and off just from energy, because people, that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, all right. Well, it was, really awesome talking to you again.
It was great. It's always
awesome to have you on
so
again.
Much. I love being on your channel, Tiffany. Thank you for asking me. And I really want to get you on my channel too. I did a quick live stream on my channel before I came on, and I said I'd really like to have you and some others, and I'm going to make that happen.
Yeah.
So you need to come over to mine.
What's your live stream? Is it, 'cause I know you did something in your closet or something, like from your closet?
I'd love to have you on for a collector's closet, because what I'm going to try to do, regularly do a little fun question and answer on, bringing out pieces from my period collection, and then having a guest, and we can discuss it and talk about construction and fun things, and just a fun shitty chat, and I think people enjoy that, because it's you get the best of costuming, plus there's sort of let's be honest, we're all still really isolated a lot these days, and it's really fun to be able to kind of do some fun question answer over something that we're all interested in, but then also just kind of keep it fun and lively. So that's what I'd like to do at least once a month through the winter. So I'd love to have you on one of those.
I'd love to. Definitely let me know when. We'll make the schedule. Yeah, glad you're able to join us too, Carla. And for those that were only able to catch a little bit of it, or that people that were only able to catch a little bit, or maybe came in late, I will have the replay up on my IGTV, Instagram TV, and also eventually then to all of my other platforms like Facebook, YouTube, all of that fun stuff. So, all right. Yes.
Well, thank you, Tiffany. It was great.
All right. Yes, it was great having you on again, and we'll have to do it again. I think this is your third time on. Yeah. Your third time in the tavern. Yeah, we'll definitely have to do it again. Have you on a fourth time, because we always have such fine and good conversation.
I agree, and I think people enjoy them too. Everyone's really sweet, but I think we have a good kindred spirit bond going on. So we're definitely the conversation is never stilted. Not that it would matter, but I mean we still have fun. But I think
absolutely.
I think we get on like a house on fire. So cheers to that.
I knew that there was a reason why I always visited your tent first at Fort Frederick before I really knew you. So
absolutely, no, you're a fellow kindred spirit, my dear. I'm very glad to know you, and thank you for asking me on for spooky season, because this was absolutely fun, and it was a treat for me. I have been moping about a little bit too much, and Daddy wouldn't want that. So thank you for having me and getting me dressed up. And y'all take care of yourselves. Be careful out there. All right.
Big cheers to everybody that joined us. All right, and that will join us in the replay. All right. Huzzah. Thank you so much, April.
Thank you, Tiffany.
Have a good weekend. Everybody
You too,
else
dear.
have a good weekend too.
Bye, everyone. Take care.
Take care, everybody.